This case was hidden because it threatened the very foundation of trust. But today, I will tell you how a simple discovery in an attic exposed a decade-old crime buried under layers of silence. For years, no one dared to speak of it. But one forgotten detail in the archive changed everything. It started with a routine call, an anonymous tip about an old, neglected property in Akron, Ohio. The house had sat empty for years, a relic in a quiet cul-de-sac. When I first arrived, I noticed the usual signs of disuse: overgrown yard, peeling paint, but what caught my eye was a battered old suitcase hidden behind a loose panel in the attic. Something about it didn't belong. Too out of place, too deliberate. Would you have noticed this detail in the file? The suitcase was unmarked, stained with dust and age. We opened it, expecting perhaps old clothes or forgotten keepsakes. Instead, we found a bundle of faded photographs, faces blurred by time, a series of documents, and a small, crumpled notebook, a trace of something darker. The photographs depicted a young girl, no older than 8 or 9, with her family. The documents, medical records, school reports, and a series of handwritten notes hinted at a life interrupted. But the notebook? That was the key. It contained cryptic entries, references to Operation Red Moon and the Agreement. It was written in a hurried, trembling hand, as if the author was afraid of being caught. How did this suitcase get there? Who left it? And why? I was about to dig deeper when doubts crept in. Could it all be a coincidence? The house's owner, a retired doctor named Marcus Hall, had been dead for years. But the records showed that his daughter, Danielle Ruiz, had moved away long ago. Why hide this in an attic of all places? This question haunted me. I traced the family's history through the local records, school enrollments, court documents, CPS reports. Nothing seemed unusual at first glance, but the deeper I looked, the more suspicious the silence became. The girl's name vanished from official records after 2012. No official explanation, just an untraceable disappearance. But what was Operation Red Moon? I found a file from the FBI's FOIA request marked with a case number from 2011, an investigation that had been classified. It referred to a shadow operation involving unauthorized medical experiments on minors. The files were heavily redacted, but the language hinted at black ops. Did this involve the girl, or was it something else? Would you have suspected this was more than just a family secret? The pieces were there, hidden in plain sight. The shadowy references, the missing records, the suitcase full of evidence. Someone had tried to erase her from history. But why? And how did it all connect to the house on the cul-de-sac? Betrayal came swiftly. I learned that Danielle Ruiz, the daughter, was still alive, living under a different name in Queens, New York. When I reached out, she refused to speak, but her silence betrayed her guilt. The files revealed that she had been working as a nurse in a private clinic, quietly disappearing from the radar after 2012. What secrets did she carry? Did she know what her father was involved in? Was she complicit, or merely a victim? I questioned myself. Did I push too hard? Was I missing something? The internal rules of the system demand silence, but I couldn't ignore the mounting evidence. In the end, the shadow operation was never officially acknowledged. No arrests, no indictments, just whispers of a clandestine network. Doctors, officials, shadowy figures, working together to conceal experiments on unregistered minors. The suitcase was just the tip of the iceberg. And yet, the most haunting part? The girl's fate remains unknown. The records vanish. The trail goes cold. Did she escape? Or was she silenced? I often wonder if the truth died with her, or if it's still out there, waiting to be uncovered. Why do you think this was hidden for so long? Wouldn't someone have spoken out, or was the system too deeply entrenched? If this case were investigated today, more transparently, how do you think it would end? Would justice finally be served? Or would the shadow swallow it again? I solved more than one case, and this is only the beginning. Subscribe if you're ready for the next. These files rarely survive to the end. Subscribe while this one is still here. If you've listened this far, you're searching for the truth. Subscribe, I'll show you the next case. Every day, I'll post a real case from my archive. Investigations I solved that still unsettle me. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one, and drop a comment. It really helps this channel. Stay safe. See you tomorrow. The more I dug, the more I realized this wasn't just about one girl or a hidden suitcase. It was a network, a web spun across multiple states with layers of secrecy designed to keep the truth buried. I found references to Operation Red Moon in confidential FBI memos, but they were all heavily redacted. Nothing concrete, only fragments. A cover-up of something much larger. Would you have suspected that such a shadow operation could exist in the heart of America? I questioned the integrity of the local authorities, the hospitals, even the family's own circle. The house on that cul-de-sac was a dead end, yet it was a nexus, an entry point into something much darker. And then I found a second suitcase, hidden in a different attic, this time in Fresno, California. Same handwriting, same cryptic references. Inside, more photographs, another child, another family. The pattern was clear. These children weren't isolated incidents. They were part of a systematic operation, but for what purpose? Medical experiments? Psychological conditioning? Or something else entirely? Why would a shadow network go to such lengths? The money trail led to a series of shell companies, fronts for clandestine activities, laundering funds through crypto accounts, discreet, untraceable, designed to vanish. I had to ask myself, who benefited from this? Who was behind it? The betrayal was personal. I uncovered that Danielle Ruiz, the girl in the photos, had been taken from her family under the guise of a medical retreat, but records showed no official registration. The clinic she was taken to was unlicensed, operating under the radar. And her father, Marcus Hall. Dead, yes, but his influence lingered through silent partners, people who refused to be named, who had their hands in the shadows. Did Danielle ever suspect what she was part of? Did she know her father's true work? Or was she just another pawn? I think about her, living in Queens, years after her supposed disappearance, working as a nurse. Did she ever see through the lies? Or was she too deeply embedded? Would you have believed the official story if you had seen the evidence I found? The government's silence, the missing records, the connections. Something about it all felt deliberately concealed. And I kept asking, why was this case buried so deep? Why was it kept secret even from the public? The betrayal extended beyond the family. I learned that some of the doctors involved had ties to federal agencies, people sworn to protect, yet willing to participate in something illicit. The internal rules of the system, silence, loyalty, concealment, made it impossible to expose everything at once. That's how these operations survive, hidden behind layers of bureaucracy. The downfall came quietly. An internal leak, a whistleblower who vanished before they could testify. The investigation stalled, and the trail went cold. But I know the truth is still out there, buried in unmarked files, in declassified documents that never saw the light of day. Now I wonder, what happened to the children? Did they escape? Were they ever truly free? Or were they lost forever in some shadowed corridor of the system? The suitcase in the attic was just a fragment, a warning sign. The real story is far more complex and perhaps far more disturbing. Why do you think the system is so eager to cover this up? Could it be that exposing the truth would threaten powerful interests? If this case were reopened, how many would be exposed? Would justice ever truly reach those responsible? I've seen enough to know. Secrets like this don't stay buried forever. They only wait in the dark until someone dares to bring them into the light. And maybe, just maybe, this is that moment. If you've listened this far, you're already part of the investigation. Subscribe while this file is still accessible. There's more to uncover, more shadows to confront. Every day, I'll post a real case from my archive, investigations I solved that still unsettle me. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one, and drop a comment. Your questions, your doubts, they matter. Stay vigilant, stay safe, and remember, some truths are better left hidden, but not forever. The deeper I went, the clearer it became that this operation wasn't just about clandestine experiments, it was about control, over lives, over secrets, over the very fabric of trust that binds families and communities. I found evidence that some of these children, taken under the guise of care, were subjected to psychological conditioning, programs designed to erase memories, to reshape identities. Would you have believed that in a country built on freedom, such horrors could quietly unfold? The files pointed to a series of clandestine clinics operating in legal gray zones, some in strip malls, others hidden behind unmarked doors. They trafficked in fear, in silence. The key was in the records, medical logs, billing statements, falsified to hide the true purpose. And who was behind it? The more I uncovered, the more I realized it was a network spanning multiple states: Texas, California, Ohio, interconnected by shadowy figures with government ties. Some of the doctors involved had ties to military contractors, others to private prisons. The common thread? Money and the willingness to do whatever it took to keep the operation secret. I questioned myself. Did I miss something? Did I overlook the signs? Or was I simply fighting against a system that had become too powerful, too corrupt? I remember the nights I pored over those files, feeling the weight of what I was uncovering. This was no ordinary case. It was a conspiracy that threatened to shatter the foundation of everything I believed in. One name kept recurring: Dr. William Carter, a now retired psychiatrist with ties to several shadow clinics. I found reports of unregistered minors, notes about special test subjects, and references to protocols that sounded more like military experiments than medical treatments. I wondered, how many children had been taken? How many had vanished without a trace? Would you have suspected that the government might be involved in such a secret program? The files hinted at unofficial pressure on local authorities to keep quiet. Some records had been deliberately destroyed or sealed. It was like a puzzle with missing pieces, pieces that might never be recovered. Then came the betrayal I feared most. Someone inside the system had been feeding me false information. I discovered that key witnesses I had contacted had suddenly disappeared. Their phones disconnected, their homes empty. I was being watched. The Shadow Network was aware of my investigation. My every move was being monitored. And yet, I pressed on. I found a lead. An anonymous tip pointing to a warehouse in Travis County, Texas. I arranged a covert visit. Inside, I found a sealed room with equipment that looked like experimental medical devices. There were files, too. More photographs, more names, and a series of coded documents. The names matched those in the suitcase in Akron. The web was wider than I thought. But even as I gathered evidence, I sensed I was running out of time. The pressure grew heavier. Someone was eager to shut this down. Permanently. I knew that if I pushed too hard, I might disappear, just like those witnesses. The system had a way of swallowing its secrets whole. Would you have been brave enough to expose this? Or would you have looked away, afraid of the consequences? That's what kept me awake. This constant question of how far the corruption reached. Every step I took was a gamble. Every document, a potential trap. And then, the final blow, an internal memo leaked from a secure government server referencing Operation Red Moon as a state secret, classified above top secret. It confirmed what I had suspected. This was no rogue operation. It was sanctioned at the highest levels, a program designed to experiment, control, and erase. The truth is, I don't know what happened to the children. Some might have been returned. Others disappeared into the shadows forever. The files I uncovered suggest that at least a few were transferred to undisclosed locations, possibly even overseas. The question lingers, did any of them escape? Or were they lost in the system's labyrinth? Why do you think this was kept hidden for so long? Wouldn't someone have spoken out if they knew? Or was the fear so great that silence became the only option? If this case were reopened today, how many more layers would be uncovered? Would justice ever reach the victims? I've seen enough to understand. This isn't just a story of corruption. It's a story of betrayal. Betrayal of trust, of innocence, of the very idea that the system protects us all. Sometimes the truth is too dangerous to reveal, but I've always believed that the truth has a way of surfacing. If you've listened this far, you're already part of the investigation. Subscribe while this file remains accessible. There are more secrets in my archive, more cases that reveal how thin the line is between order and chaos. Every day, I'll post a case from my past, an investigation that keeps me awake at night. Subscribe so you don't miss the next revelation, and leave a comment. Your doubts, your questions, they keep me going. Remember, some truths are buried deep for a reason, but the shadows always have a way of creeping back into the light. The more I uncovered, the clearer it became that Operation Red Moon was only part of a larger puzzle, a clandestine chain of experiments and manipulations stretching across decades. I found references to a series of secret meetings, codenamed the Conclave, where high-ranking officials, military contractors, and shadow operatives discussed the future of behavioral control and population management. The language was chilling, veiled in euphemisms, but the intent was unmistakable. Control through manipulation, silence, and fear. Would you have believed such a conspiracy could exist in a country like ours? I questioned everything: the integrity of the agencies, the motives of those in power. I reviewed internal memos, intercepted communications, even some declassified documents that hinted at a deliberate effort to experiment on unregistered minors, children who could be used as unwitting test subjects. The files pointed to a systematic approach, targeting vulnerable populations, often in areas with limited oversight or transparency. And then I discovered a startling connection. In the aftermath of the 2012 investigations, several clinics involved in Operation Red Moon abruptly shut down. Their records were sealed, personnel vanished, and a handful of witnesses mysteriously disappeared or refused to speak. The pattern was clear: an orchestrated cleanup, a purge of incriminating evidence. I wondered, how many children had been taken and what became of them? Were they just discarded, or worse, hidden away in undisclosed facilities? Would you have suspected this was more than just a local family secret? The scope was national, possibly international. The staggering realization hit me. This wasn't just about illegal medical experiments. It was about social control, shaping minds, erasing identities, and possibly even creating programmable individuals. The files contained references to mind mapping, behavioral modification, and targeted psychological interventions. I questioned myself. Did I miss something? Could I have connected the dots earlier, or was I simply fighting against a beast that had grown too large, too entrenched? I remember those sleepless nights staring at the screen, realizing I was exposing parts of a story the government desperately wanted to keep hidden. The betrayal extended into family too. I uncovered that Danielle Ruiz, the girl in the photos, had multiple aliases and had been transferred across states multiple times. She was an unregistered minor, officially vanished from the system, yet alive and working as a nurse. Did she know what she was part of? Or was she just a victim of the machine, a cog in a sinister plan? I could see the fear in her silence when I reached out. Would you have believed this if you saw the evidence? The cover-up was airtight, files shredded, witnesses bought off or threatened, and the entire operation cloaked in classified secrecy. I kept asking myself, why was this allowed to happen? Why did the system turn against its own citizens? The answer was always the same: power, control, and silence. And then came the betrayal from within the system. My trusted contacts turned out to be compromised. I found evidence that some of my own colleagues had been paid off, coerced into silence, or active participants. The warning signs were everywhere: unexplained delays, missing files, and now, covert surveillance. I was being watched. Someone wanted me to stop digging. But I couldn't. Not yet. I followed a lead to a warehouse in Texas where I uncovered a hidden laboratory. Equipment designed for behavioral experiments, storage units filled with children's clothing, medical supplies, and more photographs. Proof that children had been kept in what looked like detention. The files linked these locations to a network of safe houses, all part of the operation. Why do you think they went to such lengths? Wouldn't it have been easier to just keep everything in the shadows? They built a fortress, layers of deception, compartmentalized operations, and a system that protected its own. I realized that exposing this would threaten powerful interests, people with everything to lose. And the children? The ones taken from families? Where did they go? Some records indicated transfers to special facilities overseas, hidden in plain sight, perhaps in countries with weaker oversight. Others were never seen again. I suspect that some of these children were used for experiments, mind control, or even worse, programming to serve clandestine agendas. Why was this case kept secret so long? Why did no one speak out? The fear was palpable. Fear of retribution, fear of losing everything. The cover-up was so vast that even the truth was sanitized again until only faint traces remained. But I knew the truth was still out there, buried beneath layers of lies. If this case were reopened today, what would happen? Would we finally see accountability? Or would the system's grip be too strong? I believe some of the culprits are still active, hidden behind false identities, operating in the shadows. And I wonder, how many more victims are out there, silent, waiting for someone to listen? I've seen enough to understand. This isn't just a conspiracy theory. It's an ongoing nightmare, one that infiltrates the very fabric of society. The files I've uncovered are evidence of a systematic effort to control, manipulate, and erase. And the worst part? The victims, those children, are still out there, somewhere, forgotten by the world. Would you have believed this if you saw the proof? Or would you dismiss it as paranoia? Think carefully. Because the more I reveal, the more I realize. This is only the beginning. The shadows are deeper than we thought, and some truths, once uncovered, are too dangerous to ignore. If you've made it this far, you're already part of the investigation. Subscribe while this file remains accessible. There are more hidden stories, more truths waiting to surface. Every day, I'll post a case from my archive, investigations that still haunt me. Subscribe so you don't miss the next revelation, and leave a comment. Your doubts, your insights, they keep the search alive. Remember, some secrets are buried for a reason, but in the end, the truth always finds a way.